by definition, I'm also a Muslim myself. I don't practice it. Do I believe in God? Yes, I do. Do I pray? Not so much, and so on and so forth. But some of my friends were very, very strict in terms of religion. And with one of them, I remember to this day, I had a lot of debates because he always says or said he knows that God exists. And I always said, how can you know? Can you prove it? And he said, I just know. And for me, this was always a big debate that we had. And at some point, I was like, dude, I don't even know whether I exist. So when the movie Matrix came out and we had all of this talk about simulations, I'm like, yeah, that actually might be true. How do we know that we exist? So from the age of 12, 13, 14, I went on this personal journey of like figuring out what does it actually mean to know? What do we know as humans? What do we don't know? Where do we have uncertainties, etc.? And one of the quotes that stuck with me after reading many, many, many philosophy books was from René Descartes, where he said, cogito ergo sum, which in Latin means, I think, therefore I am. I was like, yeah, might not be a proof, but I take it. At least I take this as the proof of my own existence, but let's go on the journey of identifying what do we really know. So this journey and knowing was something that was really like important to me. I really took it was a challenge to figure out what do we really know as humans and what do we don't know. And I really liked mathematics. Why did I like mathematics? Because in mathematics, we know, we can prove things. And if we think about mathematics, we have theorems, and every theorem in mathematics is a non-self-evident statement that has been proven to be true, right? It has been proven to be true either on the basis of generally accepted statements, such as axioms, or on the basis of previously established statements, such as other theorems. Now, one of the theorems that you're all familiar with, I guess, is the Pythagorean theorem. A to the power of 2 plus b to the power of 2 equals c to the power of 2. And for that theorem, according to Wikipedia, there are more than 370 known proofs. So we really know that that's the case. A to the power of 2 plus b to the power of 2 equals c to the power of 2, given a certain shape of the triangle. So that's true. Now, looking at mathematics, you might still remember from your days in school, I surely do from my days in school, every time in geometry we had these kind of things and we had to prove something, we could write at the bottom QED, quod erat demonstrandum, what we had to prove. We basically proved what we had to prove. And I took a lot of pride every time I managed to prove something because I knew that was true. Now, my love for mathematics related or resulted in a big love for physics, biology, chemistry, and ultimately medicine, which Karim mentioned. I studied medicine for 6 years, partly in Germany, partly in the US. And the nice thing about science, natural science, is that in natural science, we have so-called scientific laws. And those laws always apply to a physical system under the same condition, right? There are two things that are important here. These laws always apply under the same condition. So when we look, for example, at gravitation being on the surface of the Earth, we have Newton's law of gravitation, and that always applies. And what does it mean if a law always applies? It gives us predictability. So we know if we do A, we will get B. And to some extent, that also relates to the human body. Although the human body is a complex adaptive system, but as humans, we have a lot of things in common. So to some extent, there are the same conditions in my body as there are in Karim's body or someone else's body. So when we take a drug, right, in order to get a treatment, there is some predictability that that drug will work. But there is only some predictability, not 100%. And that's why every drug has side effects mentioned in the packaging, etc. Now, if we move from mathematics over natural science to social science, we see that in social science, we have models that describe general trends or expected behavior rather than being absolutes. And there is this saying, which I'm sure some of you have heard, every model is wrong, but some of them are helpful. And that also applies, basically applies to every single social science model. This is not to discredit social science. I think social science has resulted in a lot of good for us as humans. Psychology is one of those things, and leadership is part of that. The management theory is primarily social science, and there's a lot of good things in there, but none of those things result in absolute truth, in us absolutely knowing. So predicting, if we do A, we will get B. And we see the result of this when we, for example, look at the markets. We see the result of this every time when we are in the position that we have to give feedback to someone. Are we going to provide the sandwich method or a different method? And what kind of reaction will I get from that person? Can we predict it 100%? No, we can't. And I think every single one of us has been in a situation where we saw something like this. Either as a parent, I myself am the parent of 3 kids, 8, 6, and 4 years old. And when they were smaller, or our 4-year-olds still, and we were walking through the supermarket and passing the candy bars, she was like, oh, I really want that. And at the same time, my wife is a dentist. I can't buy them chocolate all the time. So I said no. And then you get that kind of a result. Your kid basically screaming long and loud so that everyone in the supermarkets hear it. But you don't know what to do. So at the one hand side, I don't want to give them the candy bar. On the other hand, I want them to be quiet. Now, what do? There's countless books that tell us as parents what to do, but none of them captures really the truth. Another example is this one. It looks like a beautiful picture. You have this newborn kid like lying on their father's belly sleeping, but look at the father. He's exhausted. I've been in this situation multiple times, and every time I was like, what can I do so that the kid sleeps in their own bed so that I can go to sleep in my own bed because I have to teach the next day, or I have an important meeting, or I just want to get some sleep. And there's countless books, again, that can tell you if you do this, then you get that. And this morning, I was looking at Amazon.com, and I found, like within a few minutes, I found like 5 books. And look at the titles of them, especially the last one, The Baby Sleep Solution, a proven program to teach your baby to sleep 12 hours a night. And you have the same kind of books related to management, related to leadership, where you have like proven practices, some of them even neuroscience-based or like brain-based. But to be true, to be honest, none of those things capture really truth as we have in mathematics or as we have in natural science, given the same conditions. Now, what does that mean for us as leaders? What does that mean for us as people that develop other people? I think we really have to embrace the fact of not knowing. Why? Some people think the more we understand about the brain, at some point we will figure it all out. Figure out how people act, how people behave, and how we can lead them, how we can maybe even manipulate them. There's this great quote from Emerson Poole. He said, if the human brain were so simple that we could understand it, we would be so simple that we couldn't. Now, is that true? I don't know. But this is one of those models, one of those quotes that help me as a leader, as a human being, as a parent, to accept the fact that I don't know. And it's okay that I don't know, so that I have to find tools and techniques that help me deal with not knowing. And that also gives me permission and the right to be wrong. Because if I don't know, I can't predict, I can't expect to always take the right decisions. But what I can do, what I can try to do, is to take the right decisions over time. Not every time, but over time, due to constant learning. Learning about the people that I work with, like understanding the patterns, how they behave, etc. Learning the organization that I work within, learning the clients that I serve, learning about the clients that I serve, right? As a parent, learning about my kids and how they act and feel as human beings. Like having that learning journey helps me be more right over time, but not be right every time. And I need to give myself that permission. Now, let me give you a concrete example of a leader who basically leads under uncertainty. And I think they've done a pretty good job. One of the podcasts that I really, really like is called Recode Decode. Some of you might be familiar with it, with Kara Swisher, who is a tech journalist, and she does a fantastic job interviewing founders and CEOs of tech companies. And a few weeks ago, I heard her talk to Brian Chesky, the co-founder and CEO at Airbnb. And many of us, like Karim's company, my company, we have been impacted by COVID, right? It's very normal, I think. But we haven't been impacted the same way that travel and hospitality industry has been impacted. And Airbnb works in the travel and hospitality industry. So what happened early March was that within a few days, Airbnb lost 100% of their revenue. And then not only lost 100% of the revenue forecast that they had, they also had many millions of clients asking for refunds. Now, this could be easy. You could say, oh, we have insurance, the insurance covers it. But it turned out to be not that simple after all. First of all, many insurances don't have a pandemic coverage. That's one. Number two, Airbnb is not the host. It's not a hotel chain, but every host at Airbnb has a different cancellation policy. So many of those hosts did not have flexible cancellation. So people that had done bookings, the guests, would not get a refund if they canceled their trip. So they all reached out to Airbnb and said, but we want a refund. This is like a very dramatic scenario. So you can imagine being a CEO of that company, right? You're in the midst of going public. They were going to file their S1A or S1C, I think, to get public during 2020. They had to stop all of that, and they had to deal with all of those things related to the coronavirus crisis. So what does he do? First of all, he admits that he can't take all the right decisions. There's no way of knowing what the right decisions will be. Second, he creates a framework for himself and for his board and for his leadership on how to take decisions. He says, we have to take every decision based on our values and principles. Now, we hear people talk about values and principles a lot. What do they actually mean? The best definition I have found, something that I really like, is values are the things that you do when you're hit the hardest. Because when it's sunny and bright outside, everyone has great values. Everyone is generous, right? But when you're hit the hardest, then you show your true self. Then you display your values. And at Airbnb, Brian Chesky said, one of our values is that we build connection and that we build community. Now, being in this crisis, we still need to build connection and we need to build community. We need to build community with our guests and connection. We need to build community and connection with our hosts, with our investors, with all of our stakeholders, not only one of them. And we can't prioritize one over the other. Another value is we don't want to do harm. Now, Airbnb is one of those companies that have a lot of unintended consequences based on their business model, and some might be critical of them, which is okay. But in this crisis, they said, we want to be considered as the good guys. We want to get good out of this crisis, but we also we don't want to do harm to anybody. So how do we do this? Now, looking at the different stakeholders, the clients, the guests want their money back. At the same time, the hosts need those revenues to pay for the mortgages, etc., of the apartments, of the houses that they're renting out. So what does Brian Chesky do? He says, we're going to overrule the cancellation policy of every host. This is going to piss off most of the hosts, sorry for my language, but at least we make sure that every guest is safe and no one travels because of the fear that they won't get their money back. All right, so the guests are taken care of. Now let's look at the hosts. Let's reach out to them. Let's talk to them. Let's understand what their big pains are. And it turns out, yes, many of those hosts would not be able to make rent or pay their mortgage. So Airbnb decides to take $250 million in cash out of their balance sheet and distribute it to their hosts. This is tough, especially for a company that wants to get public soon, right? Then they say, all right, so we've taken care of that. Now, based on the actions that the leadership team took, that the company took, Airbnb employees got together and said, we need to do something for our hosts. So they start to collect money. They collect money, they donate money, they get up to $1 million. When the founder, Brian Chesky, sees that, he says, let's add a zero to that. He adds another 9 million, making that 10. The investors get inspired by this, add another 7 million, making it 17 million. So instead of, in addition to the 250, they add another 17 million, all based on acting based on your values. Then they say, all right, we've taken care of the guests, we've taken care of the hosts. Now we need to get our company in shape. And we are draining money, we're bleeding money. We can't run like this. We will be bankrupt if we don't change anything. So again, they look at their values. They're like, our core is connecting people. Our core is what we've done for the past 5, 6, 7 years, where people can rent out their places. So we kill every other project. We kill all of those projects because they're bleeding money. Now, we kill those projects, but we still have a lot of people on staff. Unfortunately, we have to let go of many of our people. This is bad. We have to do that. Now, acting according to our values, and every one of you knows how easy people can hire and fire in the US, Airbnb did not have to provide any severance package, but they provide a really generous one to every single employee because they believe these people have contributed to our success. They should be compensated for that. They also take out all of those options that people, or the period that people have to wait until they basically get their options. They kill that. Those people get their options right away. So if Airbnb goes public, they can actually make money on the stock options that they have, despite not being at the company any longer. Now, they talk to their employees and they're like, yes, this is great, but honestly, what I'm getting will help me get through the next 3 to 6 months. No one knows how long this COVID crisis is going to be. I have monthly payments I have to do, as all of us do, like a mortgage or a rent that we have to pay, food that we need to buy, kids that we need to take care of. So they say, money is great. Ultimately, our people need a job. So again, acting based on their values, they're like, what can we do for our people? They set up an internal job portal with all the profiles for Airbnb employees who accepted to be as part of this program, and companies outside can now look at this job portal and recruit people from Airbnb directly. Now, fortunately, many of those people are highly skilled, highly talented, and many of them find a new job despite the challenging times that we're all in. Now, you see that they took many decisions, all of them based on their set of values. Now, was every decision the right one? Maybe not. Maybe they should have consulted with the hosts before overriding their cancellation policy. But at the same time, acting based on their values gave them the chance to explain why they took a decision in a certain way, and then again, make it good with the hosts by acting in good faith with them going forward. So leadership, when we look at this, there is a lot of models out there that can help us understand patterns, but they don't really help us make all of those difficult decisions as leaders. We need to look at other things, and we need to embrace the uncertainty that we have. Now, does this mean that we don't read books about leadership? I don't think so. I think every book that we read helps us to build a better mental model, build a stronger foundation of analytical skills and decision-making skills. But we should not go for the assumption that we have absolute certainty about what the outcomes of our decisions will be. So all of us as leaders, as people who work with leaders, need to go on this lifelong journey. And I really love a quote that I heard from Picasso at one point, when a journalist asked him, how long did it take you to become a master of your craft? He responded, I'm not a master yet, but to get to this point, it took me a lifetime. So that's basically it. Leadership is uncertainty by default. I think we need to act based on our values, the things that we really believe in, the things that we're willing to do when it's hard, and have the willingness to continuously learn. That's it from my side, Karim. And I stick to the time box. That's great.
Stuck to the time box fabulously. Thank you so much, Sohrab. That was fascinating. I was kind of hoping that would go on for longer, but also we wanted to stick to the time box. There's always that danger in there. But that was super interesting. Appreciate it. I'm now inviting questions to Sohrab. So if you can ping those to me, I will present those one by one. You can put them in the chat, send them straight to me or straight over. So now we opening up the floor to questions. I'll start with the question while we're waiting. So, how does having shareholders impact the ability to do the kind of things that you've just talked about?
I think it really doesn't. It might sound extreme, but there is. So one of the leaders that I read a lot about is Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and also Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett apparently at some point told to Jeff, or said to Jeff Bezos, that you can decide what kind of a concert you're playing. Either you're playing a rock concert or you're playing a ballet. Just be transparent about what you're doing so that you attract the people that want to listen to your concert. And I think it's the same with organizations. If we want to have shareholders that are in there for the long run, right, that are in there because they share the values that we do, we just need to make that explicit to them. But if we want to lure people into working with us by paying them like high dividends, as some organizations do on a quarterly basis, annual basis, then yes, they are not in there for the long run as well. And it's not only theory what I'm saying. So a few years ago, Paul Polman, who last year I think resigned being the chairman and CEO of Unilever, he took over Unilever. And from day one, he said, I'm going to position Unilever as the most sustainable consumer goods company in the world. And he told his shareholders, he told his board, if you want to go in that direction, then stick with me. If you don't want to go in that direction, I should not be in that position because that's where I want to take the company. And yes, some people sold their stock, but at the same time, other people sharing those values, looking at the long term, invested in the stock. So I think as long as you're transparent, you will attract the type of investors, shareholders that are aligned with your way of thinking. And Jeff Bezos himself is proof of that. I think Elon Musk himself is proof of that. They don't have those people in there that just want to have the dividend because neither Amazon nor Tesla pays any dividend, but their stock is going up like this. So they manage to attract the right people. And I believe it's based on them being transparent.
Fabulous, thank you. You can probably add Steve Jobs into that as well because he didn't pay dividends either, right? And, I think the three of those folks haven't done too badly, it could be argued. Questions, folks, for Sohrab. Pick his brains while we have him. He's got a lot of experience in this space, agile leadership, business agility. What are you struggling with? Now's the time. We have a question coming through from M. Flanagan. We'll guess the first name. What are the key decision-making skills, Sohrab?
Oh man, you told them to be tough on me. That's a tough one. I mean, many of the things that we use in traditional ways of managing, right? Analyzing a situation, talking to various stakeholders, getting their input, all of those things are still key for decision-making. I think when I talk about taking decisions based on your values, that doesn't mean that you ignore everything, every single point of data that's out there. You actually try to get as much data, as much certainty as possible, but then still be aware of the fact that you can't know everything and then make the best decision given your gut, given your instincts, right? So looking at data, talking to stakeholders, talking to customers, which are a specific type of stakeholders, looking at your past experience within your organizations. like evaluating your own decisions over time, how they turned out, like things that you did 5 years ago, what the long-term impact of that was. All of those things are still relevant, in addition to being willing to take a decision based on your faith, based on your values, based on your instinct.
Yeah, it's an important point, isn't it? Just because you're values-based doesn't mean that logic and reason and analysis and thinking goes out the window. Right? It's not.
Absolutely.
It's not one or the other. Thank you for that question. So yes, please others who do have questions, now's the time. But I guess I'm going to ask another one because I can. Sohrab, what I get in a lot of my trainings, like when you talk about these examples, a lot of them are from companies who were born this way, right? They were born with a certain type of leadership, a certain type of agility, and a certain leader and founder, right? You mentioned Unilever, but the question I get asked from my clients is, what traditional organization who's been around for 100 years and is very hierarchical, very process-based, very top-down command and control, very much predicting the future type mentality, has successfully made the transition to agile leadership and to operating in a different way?
Yeah. So let me take a step back first, because you mentioned the organizations like the Amazon, the Tesla, the Apple, they've been born this way. Now, at some point, every company today, no matter how big they are, was a startup, right? None of these companies was born a giant. Every single one was a startup at some point. So at some point, they had that founder's mentality. And there's a great book by James Allen, a senior partner at Bain & Company, called The Founder's Mentality. So that's a recommendation I give to everyone to read, how organizations brought back that founder's mentality. Some by bringing back the actual founder, as Apple did, but some by hiring great people who had that founder's mentality. Now, looking at this, like a giant organization that's been around for over 150 years, 3M. 3M, we all know 3M, they do this wonderful things called Post-its, but that's their most popular product. It's actually not their cash cow. Some of their biggest products are highly sophisticated, like medical stuff. Like when I was working in the hospital, working as a surgeon at some point, we were wearing the stuff that was all made by 3M. At the same time, they do a lot of glue for the automotive industry and so on and so forth. And now 3M has been innovative for many, many decades. How do they do that? Now, usually there's more than one thing, but one thing strikes out in particular, and it's a metric that they have. First of all, 3M measures the amount of revenue they make with products that were brought to market within the past 5 years. Not many organizations do that. Most organizations that I know of, they just look at revenue as one bucket and break it potentially down into different products or categories, but not necessarily based on the timeline when those products were introduced to the market. That's a metric. Another thing that 3M has is a policy. And every manager has in their evaluation, they need to make 20% or more revenue with products introduced in the past 5 years. So now think about that. If you have that kind of policy in place and that kind of metric, it means you must put some focus on those things, on driving innovation in your department. And when you apply focus to that, it also means that you take away focus from maybe your current cash cow. So they're intentionally going to kill at some point their current cash cow in order to build up new business models, new products that are successful in the market. Now, one of the key clients that we have here in Germany, in Cologne, is Deutsche Telekom. And the things that I'm going to share right now is basically public knowledge, so I'm not breaking any confidentiality. Before WhatsApp was created, Deutsche Telekom had something similar to WhatsApp. They never launched it. Why? Because that would kill their cash cow being the SMS. Now, guess what? Independent from whether you launch it or not, someone will launch it. So sooner or later, that one will die. The question is, are you going to kill your holy cow, or is it going to be someone else? If you do it, you have another business model that's potentially working, right? So this is super important in there. If you want to have an organization that's around for the long run, Alex Osterwalder calls those organizations invincible companies. You need to constantly reinvent yourself, reinvent your business models, and be okay with letting a business model that's currently working at some point not being there, or actually actively driving that business model out. Another example for that is Apple with the iPod. Before the iPhone was launched, the iPod was their cash cow. They killed it. No one buys an iPod today, right? But they killed it. They did not let someone else kill it for them. So having that, I think there are established companies, 3M is one example, Apple is another one, that have managed to make that transition, to have that founder's mentality again and thrive into the future.
Awesome, thank you. We got some questions coming in now. Derek, thanks for that. Is it possible for the rank and file of a company to really accept leadership that admits that decisions may be suboptimal? Presidents are not elected if they say, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's one of the tough things, right? If we look at the Corona crisis right now, most of us as citizens in the societies that we live in, we're like, how can the politicians not know? How can the doctors not know? Now, if you're a medical doctor, you know, I know why they don't know, because they don't know. There's no way to know how to deal with that virus. There's no way to know whether it's the right thing to close all schools or keep them open, as the people in Sweden are doing that. So I think it starts with all of us. We don't elect, like we as an organization, we can't elect like the next president. We will be part of that election process, but within our organization, every single one of us can give that benefit to the people that are leading us, right? Be it like our direct leader or the one above that or the one above that, accepting that they don't know everything and giving them the permission to also say, I don't know, or I might be wrong. Because too often, I think we accept them, the leaders that are in higher positions, to just say that. But I think we can make it easier by accepting that, by giving them permission to do that. And at the same time, giving ourselves permission to do that. Now, as an organization, I think that change also needs to start at some point at the top. So if you have an organization that is being run by people that want certainty on every step of the way, as I currently see in a lot of automotive companies, yes, you're not going to have that cultural change. But if you have organizations that set the structures, the policies, and the metrics, as I just gave the examples with 3M, from the leader's perspective, right, allowing them to experiment, actually mandating them to experiment, then you will also see that culture change. So one thing that I try to do is to raise the awareness for that. Now, can I change it 100%? No, I can't. And I accept the fact that I can't do this. And I'm like kind to myself that I can't do this. I don't beat myself about it, but I try to raise the awareness wherever I go, with every leader that I work with, every organization that I work, in every class that I teach. You see this model here behind me. It's in German language, so you might not be able to read it, but I try to raise the awareness of the fact that we're dealing with uncertainty basically at any single moment in our life. And we need to build the resilience and the techniques to deal with that. Is every organization going to react? I don't think so.
Thanks. You're absolutely right. You look at the Bezoses and the Jobses of the world, and they failed a lot. They failed more, right? I mean, who remembers the Lisa? Exactly. So thank you for that. We have more questions. What are the key values and skills to resolve the problem statement? We might need a bit of clarification on that one. So Prem Kumar, if you can just elaborate on that question a bit, we'll come back to it if that's all right. But I'm going to go on to Nims. Very interesting talk on leadership. However, to utilize this in the agile world in terms of actually working on a project, is it to understand different leaders and propel them forward?
Can you repeat that, Karim?
I think that might just be a comment. Yeah, so how to utilize this in the agile world in terms of actually working on a project is to understand different leaders and to propel them forward. I guess they're just talking about different types of leaderships and different styles. It is a question. Might need a clarification on as well. Then, Nims, if you could rephrase that one for us, that would be super useful.
But maybe one piece of comment that we could give there. I mean, agility is all about dealing with uncertainty. So when we take the same concepts, right? In agility, we create experiments. So we define a hypothesis, we create experiments, we run a test, and then we validate or invalidate our hypothesis. And I think it's the same with leadership. Now, if we look at various situations, right, we can go and say, okay, that's how I analyze the problem or the situation right now. What is my hypothesis? Is there a way to test it? If there's not a way to test it, like what is the minimum viable product the minimum viable decision that I can take to get a bit more uncertainty? Now, sometimes we have to take that big leap of faith, right? We need to really get out there, get all in, and then we have to deal with the consequences. And that's where the values play a big role. But leadership dealing with uncertainty, I think a lot of the principles that apply in the agile space really fit well into this as well, right? The small experiments with our people, understanding them, spending time with them, getting to know them, helps us then make better decisions once we have to manage and lead them on a longer journey, right? On a more difficult task. But if we don't have that understanding, there's no way we're going to take the right decision leading those people. So getting to know them, the same way getting to know our customers, helps us make better decisions in this space as well. Maybe that's sufficient of an answer, but if not, help us by clarifying your question a bit more.
Thanks, Sohrab. There's another one from Nims as well. Also, how to utilize this leadership understanding to help one get started in working in Agile, having done the Scrum Alliance courses, to which I presume you mean CSM and CSPO. So how to utilize this leadership understanding to help after doing those things, I think is what they're asking there. How does that fit into the picture?
Yeah, I mean, no, basically talked about the product leadership a moment ago. Now, that's all about dealing with uncertainty, building new products, building new business models around those products. It's all about dealing with uncertainty and giving yourself that permission to experiment. And the definition of an experiment is you don't know what the result will be, right? So you will most likely fail with the experiments that you run. You will build stuff where your customers might not like it. Then you build something else. Your customers might not like it again. So you build something else, and ultimately you figure it out. So you go one by one. As a Scrum Master, developing a team, every team that I've worked with is a complex adaptive system. There's no way that I can get in and say, oh, today we're going to do this, and this will result in the people doing that. So over time, you get to know your team better, and having that constant feedback cycles through those retrospectives and the sprints, you will get a team to perform better. Now, are they going to increase like this? No, they're going to have dips along the way, and not because you want them to have dips, but because some of the experiments that you run with your teams don't have the result that you want to have. You, of course, want to increase velocity all the time. Who doesn't? But not everything is going to work out. So the same principles that we talked about earlier apply here for both the product owner, the Scrum Master, but also for the development team taking all those technical decisions.
Thanks, Steve. We've got some clarifications coming in. So Prem Kumar, who asked, what are the key values and skills to resolve the problem statement? We have the problem statement now. Business transformation sometimes lack the support from leadership in the getting their availability, which is leading to a problem statement. So actually getting access to them. How does that fit in?
Yeah. Not sure if I'm getting the question right, but I think any business transformation without leadership dedicating a significant amount of time it's built to fail. It's designed to fail from the beginning. I personally have not seen any organizational transformation, large or small, succeed without leadership being committed to it. And if you look at the big organizations that are good at this, right? that not only transform their business models, but also transform how they operate as an organization, they always have CEO, like senior leadership commitment and dedication and focus behind those things. And that's why, for example, Apple decided to do very little projects. Why? They had cash, they had everything, they had talent, but they said, we're going to work on only a number of products that fit on a table that gives us focus. And not only focus for the teams, because you can easily provide every single team with one project and one project only, right? I mean, for many organizations, even that's difficult. But this is something that you can do easier. Giving leadership focus means you really have to cut everything and go back to the essentials. But once you have that focus for your leadership team, then you can build great products that integrate really, really well, because those leaders in those orgs are available to provide feedback, are available to provide that coherence, that consistency over time. So without leadership focus, I don't think that many organization transformations are going to succeed. I actually think zero are going to succeed.
I could not agree more with that. We have another question. So question for the speaker: what recommendations do you have when you are dealing with elected officials who do not answer to one another and have no intention of working together to solve a problem?
So I've stayed out of politics for a reason. So to give you a bit of background, I'm the kid of two political refugees, and I grew up in a political family. And for many years in my life, I was like, at some point, I'm going to go into politics because I believe that's the place where I can make meaningful change. And then over time, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stick to business because, first of all, there's no guarantee that someone will elect me to any position, especially when I tell the things that I believe are the truth, right? And I don't want to run a beauty contest. And the second thing is, even if I get elected, I have to deal with all of the other people that are not going to do the right thing from my perspective. So running my own business is what I try to do, and I try to stay out of politics. I have my own opinions, but I can't comment on that, not because I don't want to, but because I don't have the experience on how to deal with politicians as well.
Yeah, and there's the whole thing around shared goals, right? I've never met two politicians that truly have a shared goal, and so trying to get alignment there, that's a hell. If you're up against that, then I feel for you on that one. Femi, how you doing, Femi? Karim, this sounds so much like preparation for your Cal course. Can you kindly ask whether Sohrab recommends that course, please? Well, Sohrab's never seen my course. He's going to come on it in July, but he's never seen it. So I'll let him off the hook on that one.
I've seen elements of it. I've seen elements of it, and I think I can recommend it based on what I've seen. So I will be there in July to see what Karim is actually doing. And if he does the things in a wrong way, I will just take over that class.
That's going to be fun. We can pull you in. Oh boy, the sun is now shining right in on me. Awkward. It's been amazing. I'd love to have recording and slides if those would be shared later. Thank you for hosting. So me being me and admin being not one of my strong points, I didn't start the recording until about 2 or 3 minutes in. So the good news is you missed me, which no one cares about anyway. But you probably missed about a minute of Sohrab's start. We have a talented editor who will fix that. So yes, we're going to put the recording on our website, and we'll send out a bunch of stuff afterwards. Sohrab, can we have the slides and we'll share those as well, please?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Happy to share them.
Fabulous. Let's have a look. What is your point of view on Netflix strategy of kill all sub 10% growth or market share products, barnacle products?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's more of a business strategy that they run. I haven't heard of that before, but I think if they do this, I personally agree with that. Because if you're a company that is being valued or evaluated based on your growth, you need to demonstrate growth. And anything that grows at 10% or less, for them, it's nothing. They need those big home runs, basically. And that's where they put their focus. And cutting those projects gives you the ability to put more focus on the things that are running well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Brianna does work with elected officials. It's hard. Yeah, well, yeah, good luck. So that's all. If I missed your question, then my apologies. I don't think I missed any, but I think we've covered them all. So you have probably about another 2 seconds to ping your last one in. Otherwise, I'm going to thank Sohrab for taking this time. Oh, we have a question, Nims. Thank you. You were about to get off the hook, Sohrab, but we have a late question coming in. The second question, I don't think I was clear for. Here's a question again. How to utilize this leadership understanding to help one get started in working Agile, having done the Scrum Alliance courses.
We had that one already.
We had that one, yeah, it came through again. So I think we are good. So, Sohrab, thank you so much. I know you're an hour ahead over in Germany. So I appreciate you taking the time out to speak with our London-based meetup. I guess some good things have come out of this lockdown, and that is with the virtual meetups, we can attract people from all around the world. So very much appreciate that. Do you want to plug anything, Sohrab? What are you up to right now? Anything that you want to tell people about?
What I'm doing right now, giving classes, keeping the company alive. No, keeping the company.
What are you running online?
Online, I run basically all of my classes, be it leadership, Scrum Master, Product Owner, in-house classes for leadership teams where we bring them together. All of that kind of things we currently run online, and it works surprisingly well. So I was one of the people that was very much in favor of having all classes in person, and that resulted in me traveling a lot, but it worked out really well transitioning to online. Yeah. I actually have one last slide that I always share when I run a presentation, and you might know that quote. It's from Muhammad Ali, one of my heroes, and he says, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." And especially for all of us, I know COVID was difficult for many of us, also in the Western world, but compared to anybody else, we never have to forget how privileged we are, and that we not only have a room on earth, but compared to many other people on the surface of this earth, we live in a 5-star suite in the best hotel. So what we can do is actually serve others. And as leaders, and as people who work with leaders, leadership is a serving role. It's not the master, it's always the person who serves. So servant leaders, they lead by serving, and they serve by leading. And I really like that quote from Muhammad Ali, which I used to basically close out every single one of my sessions, so that we never forget how privileged we are. That's it from me.
That is a perfect place to wrap up with 5 minutes to spare. So thank you so much, Sohrab. For those of you who weren't here at the start, 22nd of July, mark that date. We have Dave Snowden coming to talk to you about management, which is going to be great fun. We're going to put the slides out on our website, agilecenter.com. We'll send you a note out on the Meetup website as well. So we'll get the slides. We'll also get the recording, or 99% of the recording after I remembered to start it. And so you can pass that one on to your friends and watch that back at your leisure. So go away and enjoy your evenings, and I hope to see you here in July we'll do this all over again. But Sohrab, thank you one last time. That was great. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, folks. Over and out from us.